Roll call.
Jizzle.
Here.
Neal. Olson.
Here.
Luce.
Here.
Zittergruen.
Here.
Hadley.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Is there anybody who is here and wants to address the council on anything that's not on the agenda? Hearing, seeing none. Consent agenda.
Item A, minutes of the November 21, 2022 regular meeting. Item B, claims. C, consider reappointment of Mary Ann Humple to the Regional Housing Authority. Item D, consider resolution to approve fiscal year 2022 annual financial report. E, consider resolution to approve fiscal year 22 street finance report. F, consider resolution setting a date of public hearing on the proposed development agreement with Brenton Holdings LLC. G, consider change order number 2 for Decorah 2022 street improvements, asphalt resurfacing. H, consider payment application number 4, final for Decorah 2022 street improvements, asphalt resurfacing. I, consider accepting Decorah 2022 street improvements, asphalt resurfacing project as complete. And J, consider tax abatement, Andrea and Evan Neubauer, 708 Valley View Drive rehabilitation.
I move adoption of the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion made by Luce, seconded by Johnson. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Luce.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Jizzle.
Aye.
Neal.
Aye.
Olson.
Aye.
Zittergruen.
Aye.
Hadley.
Aye.
Motion carries. Consider an ordinance to rezone 920 Pleasant Avenue from R1 Single Family Residential District to R2 Single to 4 Family Residential District, and this is the second reading. To give any information, or we had any contact on anything?
I haven't received any further feedback from the
Okay.
first reading.
We've been talking about this. for
I
a
move to
while.
approve the second reading.
Johnson or Chisel moved, seconded by Luce. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Jizzle.
Aye.
Luce.
Aye.
Neal.
Aye.
Olson.
Aye.
Zittergruen.
Aye.
Hadley.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Motion carried and approved.
I'd
Oh,
move to
sorry.
waive the third reading and adopt.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Chisel, adopted by Zittergun to move the third and adopt. Any discussion? Hearing, seeing none, roll call.
Jizzle.
Aye.
Zittergruen.
Aye.
Olson.
Aye.
Luce.
Aye.
Hadley.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Neal.
Motion carried. Consider an ordinance providing for the division of taxes levied on taxable property in the 2022 Bluffside Urban Renewal Area pursuant to section 403.19 of the Code of Iowa, second reading.
Again, this ordinance creates the district, the tax district and area that is in the plan. Doesn't approve any development agreement, just creates that funding district.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion made by Olson, it's seconded by Chisel. Any further discussion?
Have you any feedback on this one?
I have not.
Roll call.
Olson.
Aye.
Chisel.
Aye.
Luce.
Aye.
Zittergruen.
Aye.
Hadley.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Neal.
Aye.
Motion approved.
I'll move to waive third and adopt.
Second.
Motion made by Hadley, seconded by Olson to waive and adopt. Any further discussion?
No.
Hearing, seeing none. Roll call.
Hadley.
Aye.
Olson.
Aye.
Zittergruen.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Chisel.
Aye.
Neal.
Aye.
Luce.
Aye.
Motion carried. Consider ordinance amending chapter 17.96 C3 Central Business Commercial District related to principal permitted uses. And this is the third reading on this one.
I'd move for approval of the third reading and adopt.
Second.
Motion made by Chisel, seconded by Olson to approve and adopt. Any discussion? Seeing none, hearing none, roll call.
Jizzle,
Aye.
Olson,
Aye.
Hadley,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Luce,
Aye.
Zittergren.
Aye.
Motion carries. Discussion and possible action regarding parks, staff structure and facilities maintenance. Travis.
Okay, so I tried to do as best I could on the background to provide as much, trying to paint a clear picture ahead of time. So we currently have an existing vacancy in our maintenance custodian position. There's items in the Dropbox that show that job description as well as the total cost to employ that position. And we also have a retirement coming soon from our current park superintendent. Again, in the Dropbox, there are items that show job description and cost to employ of that position. With the maintenance custodial position, when that came open, as we have the practice of, as a position comes open, we evaluate that job description to make sure it's up to date or if it's the best fit for the organization as a whole. And you have heard Andy with Parks and Rec advocate for years for a third position within that Parks department. And so what staff would like council to consider is stripping the custodial duties from that position and look at contracting those services out, leaving the maintenance side to be picked up by the Parks Department. So we would in turn make the Parks Superintendent a Parks and Facilities position. And then the subordinate Parks Assistant position, we would propose adding a second. So that maintenance custodian position's cost to employ is nearly identical to the Parks Assistant cost to employ. So we're asking council to allow for these costs to be shifted over the Parks Department. The Parks Department will take on the maintenance aspect of what that job description entailed. And you'll see that in the red line of the proposed job descriptions for Parks and Facilities Superintendent and Parks Assistant. With the additional responsibilities, we would anticipate, would like to see that Parks Superintendent pay range move up 5,000 to, let's see, the top end would move up 7,000. And if you recall last month when we had this conversation on the parks, we said specifically, we're looking at the structure within the Parks Department. We're not looking at adjusting at this time, but it may come back. So here we are back, proposing to add some responsibilities to that department in that position specifically, increasing that range, 5,000 on the minimum end, 7,000 on the max end. And again, that position is currently retiring at the end of this month. That person is currently maxed out. So anybody hired to replace that position is most likely going to be less than the current maxed out employee. So we're seeing that is a reduction in cost to the city. And so we're starting at 30,000 is what we believe to be contracted out custodial for this campus here. We start there and deduct savings from the replacement of the Parks and Facilities Management position employee. And then that Parks Assistant, and again, I did not put numbers on here because this is theoretical. I don't have good numbers and didn't want to believe false information or anything like that. But that position would then be able to offset part-time employee wages paid or full-time overtime and comp time borne by the Parks Department during the summer months, especially. So that would see a further reduction in the increase on the city's expense side of 30,000. Did everyone follow me there?
Yes.
Your salary modeling, I feel strongly that you have a good basis for. Have you done an RFI on the $30,000 estimate for services?
So we have reached out to a number of different individuals, services in the area. We did actually have a test run this past Saturday because, well, with a vacancy in that position, we did need somebody to clean in the meantime as well. So we did a test run on Saturday. Have we had feedback from them yet? So we're expecting to have feedback at least from that individual. Based on the numbers we were given for them and others, we believe 30,000 is sufficient to cover that contract amount.
So you have had estimates you have a basis for it.
Yes, we do know what hourly rates others are charging, and again, test run this weekend to see how long they would look at for that weekly contract.
Thing I really appreciate between the staff, park, and public safety as well, is being able to look, we talked about that at budget time, when you have openings, to look to see how you can adjust and what can be done. So I just wanted to make sure that I complimented you on that.
Thank you. And I know the Parks Commission has has goals for Carlson Park development here in the very near future, as well as expanding our existing facilities. And Andy, can you remind me, there used to be a third person in the Parks Department, correct? Gotcha. So this is not, we're not asking to refill the campground assistant role. This parks assistant position would be able to help out at the campground, as well as some of the duties listed in maintenance. Parks Department, for example, plows back out here. Typically, the Water Department typically does the sidewalk out front, except for during typical business hours, and actually even during business hours. Right, Todd? Not Todd. Oh.
Yeah. Who's winning the game?
I was like, who's on third?
So what we do believe is that this does realign better with the goals and objectives of the organization, taking that position that was currently maintenance custodial, putting those wages towards parks assistant, bringing some of those responsibilities in. Yes, there is some increased cost borne by the city, but we believe it is tremendously offset by the additional ability within the Parks Department.
I move that we support the staff in moving forward with this realignment of staffing.
Second.
Second.
Motion made by Zittergrun, seconded by Luce. Discussion. I didn't know if Andy had any comments that he wanted to make.
Andy, can you use the microphone for those that?
Yeah, I guess I was just saying, I was preparing to come to you in January as a budget request. I think I'd warned you that before, looking for a chance to find a way to get our work done a little better and add an employee. This seemed like a opportunity to look at realigning things at a less cost to you, so to the city, and seems like a reasonable request. So changing the job duties of the park superintendent essentially allows us the chance to add the other employee at the back end. So seems like a good chance for some partnership there to make something happen.
Okay, thanks for the input. Any further discussion?
I just want to applaud you guys for being forward thinking on this type of stuff and coming up with a solution for a problem that presented itself. I think it's good work on your guys' part.
Agreed. Thank you.
I'll just say that, I'm always eager that someday when we look at these staff alignments and consider these positions, I'd love it if staff came to us. Now, hold on, I'm just 10 seconds in. I'd love it if y'all came and said, actually, we found some efficiencies and we think that this could be a shared position between these two departments. And so instead of replacing, we're going to split some duties and save some money. But the way that you figure this out doesn't really increase the end of day cost of the city that much under fairly reasonable assumptions. It's, a matter of thousands of dollars, and the net benefit to the city in terms of having basically almost another entire full-time equivalent position in a place where we desperately need it makes this, I think, worth the increased cost. So thank you so much.
Okay, roll call.
Zittergren,
Hi.
Luce,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Chisel,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Olson,
Aye.
Hadley.
Aye.
Motion carried. Let's see, okay. Recap of 2022, 2023 council goal setting and discussion on budget goals. Travis?
Okay, so really two premise behind this item on the agenda. It doesn't really necessarily need to see action, but if we at least have a general consensus of council moving forward out of this meeting, one is to recap that goal setting session we had last year to see what goals we have accomplished over the 2-year time period that these goals were established for, both 22 and 23. What's been accomplished, what is ongoing and still needs to continue, whether it's just continue to implement or further expand upon. And third, evaluate, are there any goals on here that, this just isn't a priority of ours anymore? I think we can scrap that. And 4, what goals have come up over the past year that aren't on here? So the whole premise behind this goal list, and we're doing this on the cheap and putting it on this meeting to try and help save costs, because we've already got a list of goals here established that was supposed to be for 23. So let's rehash these as opposed to last year when we created this document and contracted out with Upper Explorer Land. Not that they were overly expensive or anything like that, but we're just trying to be efficient.
All right, fiber, is it done?
It is not done.
All right, I see that being number 1.
That is listed as, yes. So if you'll go to in the packet on page 1 of the goal setting sheet, be on the cover page, fiber is listed as the highest priority goals. I know many are not going to view it as progress, but the city of Fort Dodge is currently, they are under contract. They would be the first city in the state of Iowa to implement fiber to the premises that does not have municipal electric. And they got a little creative on it, ran it by John, and John agreed with me that we should let Fort Dodge try their experiment first to see if it sees any legal challenges. Long story short, instead of a traditional bid where we would design bid, so you would, as a city, would incur maybe, the city of Charles City has north of $1 million on just their planning efforts, and they are no closer to a fiber to the premises than we are today. So instead of all the upfront planning and attempts there, the city of Fort Dodge purchased the fiber, purchased the conduit, the equipment necessary, and called it a request for proposals for service. So instead of you contractor building public infrastructure, no, you contractor, we're hiring you to install our equipment. We've looked at this. We think it's doable. We just want to make sure Fort Dodge doesn't see any legal challenges yet. Similarly, it'd be like if the city bought all the asphalt or bought all the concrete and aggregates and paid cash for all that, and then said, all right, we're just going to hire you as the contractor. No competitive bid necessary. Go build us a street with our equipment. We want to see how that plays out at least a little bit longer before we go down that path. Because worst case scenario in that situation is we have, $1 million worth of conduit and fiber on our hands, and we still have to competitively bid this out. So that's where we're at with that one. The good news is we do have potential partners lined up on both the internet service provider, the ISP side, as well as a possible respondent to an RFP if we go that route. And as long as we can align those two, that the ISP that would be our customer for our municipally owned fiber, and our cost borne to our, again, service, not contractor, but service installer, if we can align those two correctly, we're trying to achieve that's no net cost to the taxpayer. That's where we're at today on the fiber side.
What kind of a time frame would comfort for Fort Dodge come? I know that the build out times and everything like that are multiple years. What is it going to take, John, for you to feel that there's not a legal challenge to this? I mean, is it going to be in the ground and then MediaCom's going to be like, oh, you guys cheated? You know, I mean, like, how long do we have to wait again for comfort?
Yeah, good question. I'd want to see some of this get a significant part get in the ground. I haven't looked at it enough to know what all their time frames are about it, but we want to make sure nobody challenges that they're not trying to avoid the horizontal or vertical infrastructure public bidding requirements. And I think, certainly if 6 months or so go by after some of these projects have been done, that gives us a pretty good feeling that somebody isn't challenging that.
Is there a way that we can go to like the auditor or someone, and rather than waiting for a legal precedent, to ask for permission to operate in this way?
You could ask the Attorney General office for an opinion on it. It's an opinion. It's not binding. It's all it is a legal opinion.
Sure. Everything's a legal opinion unless there's precedent behind it, right?
Unless there's a challenge, and we're trying not to be the one that gets the challenge and creates the precedent.
And Fort Dodge is ahead of that, or would be.
Well, but that's only if somebody challenges them. Yeah.
Right. But they're in the time frame, they're ahead of the curve as far as who would be the first to get challenged. And if they didn't take the tack of asking permission, that's on them. Is it possible that we, at the same time, wait for the outcome of Fort Dodge, but at the same time, do something moving forward?
I could talk to Travis about formulating. We'd have to formulate
Okay.
a question to ask the Attorney General's office for an opinion on and the process for that, but we could look at doing that.
How far ahead of us is Fort Dodge?
They don't have anything on the ground really, do they yet? I would say they have all the stuff purchased to move forward with it, but my understanding is they don't have anything on the ground yet.
So how many months ahead of us are they?
At least 6 months to 8 months ahead of us. All their stuff is purchased. Their bids were done in March and April. So that's been released. I think they actually have some stuff in the ground. I'm not 100% sure. Travis did task me last week to get an update from Fort Dodge. I called and he was hunting, so he didn't call me back yet today. We are working on some additional things behind the scenes. Travis and I talked last week and today on what do other contracts look like. I didn't update Travis on this, but 20 minutes before I came down here, I did talk to a Centec to make sure that we're still going forward. We're hoping that probably the second week in January that Travis and I can meet with their CEO and their COO to kind of just rehash some things with the new CEO. Their board is still fully on board. The Centec has also approved doing the Downing edition completely next year as their trial. In a perfect world, I would think that we could continue with contracts in the next 6 months or so, get those in place. I know maybe I'm jumping the gun a little bit, but time we get through some of that, and then the build out wouldn't even start until fall of 24.
That was my next.
The build out of the Downing edition would not
No.
start until 2024?
Downing edition would be next year.
Okay.
The Metronet ran a trunk line up to the airport as part of one of our big projects this year. We're just finishing that up right now, actually. So Centec will do that next year as their trial. And we offered that to them as their trial just because about 50% of that is outside the city limits. And so with that in mind, they agreed to pay for that, to do that section themselves and do it as a test trial. So that is in process, and those conversations have been going on for the last couple of months and approved through a Centex board. So I think a Centex board is full steam ahead on Decorah. We just need to look at some other things, look at some other contracts. There's another city in Missouri that Travis and I talked about. I'm going to try and look at what their contracts look like in a public-private partnership that was going on. So there's a few things that Travis does have me doing behind the scenes as this is still progressing.
And that contract was just September, I think that one.
So our next big step that we don't want to commit to is essentially buying the infrastructure to put in the ground,
Equipment.
the equipment.
I think we want
We're
to,
not calling it infrastructure.
Okay, buying the equipment to put in the
Material, yeah.
ground. And we don't want to commit to that until we know what the Fort Dodge. So that
Until we
really,
know we can go.
but we
forward.
have everything ready to go to buy equipment once
We've got ARPA funds that we feel confident could cover the large costs if council wants to allocate all remaining ARPA funds to it.
Okay, so I guess what I'm just asking is, are there any steps we need to take before we would be ready to say, let's buy the equipment and get this going? That need to happen.
continue contract discussions behind the scenes, I think is
Okay,
hopefully Travis and I will have a report for you maybe the end of January on that.
Yeah, because again, the goal of this is to have a net cost to the taxpayer of $0, annually.
right.
So that way, the cost of a Centec, as they're a customer of our equipment, and we are in turn paying our installer in annual installments and make those a wash.
Okay, and I know this has been asked, and I know the answer is probably no, but have to ask it anyway. There's no infrastructure dollars that we can get for this project.
We don't the problem is with our, what do they call them?
It was the map.
Legacy providers. Their reported internet speeds that they provide is too high. So we do not qualify for nearly all the grant funding that you see coming out for fiber.
And there's no way to appeal that with like on the ground, but it's not that high? Or drop rate or anything
Are
along
you
those
familiar,
lines?
Yeah,
mean-
there are some communities around us that have tried the appeal process. I know
Yeah.
Elmwood Clayton Electric has done that for the city of Waukon.
Yep.
So they might have some luck on that. Decorah itself will not qualify for underserved because both providers are saying that they can do the minimum speeds. The problem comes in is to get those speeds, the cost is significantly higher for them to provide it. So it's the state is producing new maps. There's going to be new grants coming out. I've been watching those and reading up on them. Decorah is not eligible in this new one where Freeport is, which of course it doesn't help us. And it looks like, interestingly enough, Spring Grove has been challenging some in northern part of the county all the way down to Kelmer area on the outskirts of Kelmer. So they're getting very aggressive on challenging them. And they won one already in Northeast Iowa and Southeast Minnesota challenge. But I think it's going to be hard to do for Decorah. We might qualify for a public-private partnership type grant, but I don't think we'll get any broadband grant.
And so you think the reason it's going to be hard for us is because you think we're served? Even though we're not served at the rate, the speed rates,
The speeds are there, but you got to pay for it.
right?
It's like $100 to
Right, but I think Postville is getting grants because they can't afford it, right? I mean, there has to be.
Postville's demographic.
No, I get
breakdown,
that. I'm just
yeah.
saying that they had to fight hard too, right? I mean,
Right.
I'm just thinking that an appeal might paint a different picture of Decorah than we do on paper.
we can go that route. We can take a look at it and see what we can come up with.
I looked at the first two
Yeah.
rounds with OCIO and I was told by the state, no chance. So
Mhm. I know one of the difficulties is you're considered served if one property and correct me if I'm wrong here, Chopper, one property within a census block, right?
yes.
So if I'm one census block, or if I'm one homeowner and I can get those speeds, my whole service block is considered served, or census block, excuse me, is considered served.
I'm a pusher. I say appeal when we can, but
I keep looking constant on creative ideas. so.
yeah.
That's
Topography.
always, that's been a challenge in the past, getting those kind
Topography,
of
appeal.
grants into Decorah because of the basis of what they go by.
And
And
again, I don't want to, I do want to point out, I'd be remiss if I didn't point out, Fort Dodge is set to, if this continues and they are successful, they will be the first city in the state of Iowa to achieve this without municipal electric, and they're a community of 25,000. So this, I may have given others a hard time because for the past year since I've been here, we're this close. We're this close. We're closer than we were, but we're still not this close, just to be honest with you. Maybe this close, right?
Are there other communities looking at doing what we're looking at doing and what Fort Dodge is doing?
I haven't had anyone else disclose it to me. We have reached out to Charles City since they tried to, they had, when I say north of $1 million, they had a full design done to be able to bid out. They were set to go. They were selling bonds and the bonds wouldn't sell on the market. And so, yeah, they're north of $1 million in soft costs and they can't move forward. We've reached out to them. That was a couple of weeks ago. Have you heard back at all, Chopper?
I actually met with Steve, the Charles City manager, and went through and learned a bunch of how their progress had gone and things like that. They would like to do exactly what we're doing as well. So they are also watching what's going on in this scenario. There are a couple other cities that are looking at the same scenario. And Travis and I did, and Carrie, I think we did have a conversation with Michael Maloney. That's probably right when Fort Dodge was doing it. And he was like helping and guiding that. And he was excited to see this too. But I think everybody is waiting to see how this progresses. And so far, so good. But I'll report back to you once I hear back from Fort Dodge.
Well, the reason I'm asking if there's others volume purchasing, if we go together with them and make the purchases, you usually get a better deal the more you buy. So if we have 2 or 3 communities, theoretically, we should get a better deal.
Yeah.
The
Look
only
at that.
reason I'm bringing that up.
I would like to see us identify a target that when Fort Dodge is past it, we take that as proof of concept, rather than just saying, we'll have a good feeling at some point. So I don't know if that means 3 months after the first fiber to the home, is in the ground, without any noise from any of the legacy providers, or 6 months. But I think there should be a target, and I'm wondering if I can just ask staff to make a suggestion to us for a target on that so that we can, our constituents elected lots of us, not necessarily in response to, but they heard from us. We're going to make this a priority. We're going to make this happen. And so I would like to explain to them, we're being good fiscal stewards of our resources. We're protecting Decorah from, potential lawsuit. So we're kind of watching and waiting. But I'd like to be able to tell them this is when the watching stops, because we'll be confident going forward. If staff could come to us with a recommendation for when we've passed enough of a threshold in Fort Dodge to feel confident to move forward, I'd appreciate it.
Or a legal opinion from the state attorney general, right? I mean, if we had a legal opinion from the state attorney general, I'd be more comfortable.
I have a question about the process.
Yes.
Are we going to delineate what we'd like to happen for all of these different, or are we talking about simply, are these still our top priority? I'm trying to understand the purpose of this discussion.
Yeah, I think that I agree with what he's talking about in the fact that we've pretty much only talked about the fiber. So what was your direction as far as working with the other goals?
You're right, Steve. That was the first reason for bringing this on, make sure all the goals are still in place that council wants. The second is we're going to use this discussion in preliminary drafts of the budget for council consideration. So all this conversation that's been had, if the general consensus of council is we want to push the envelope with Fort Dodge, then we as staff will prepare a budget that reflects that purchasing of the fiber and the conduit, where that comes from, potentially even the price out for equipment install and revenue in for rental income from Ascentech. So that's the second portion, and why going into greater detail for items council views as high priority is good for us on the staff side for the budget purposes.
Yeah, I'm not sure the comments about the Attorney General and various things, though, get us toward that as opposed to widening out the discussion of how to support what we want to see as a priority. If we're going to full work session, let's go to full work session. But if we're not, if we're just trying to get which of these are still our priorities, I would rather go through the list and be attentive to that, and then work on work session materials when we want to get depth of it.
Like a further work session on these items, or
The ones
just
that
your,
we know are our priorities.
I thought the idea behind it when we had short meetings, if there was discussion, was to act like a work session. I mean, I guess I was thinking we were sort of in work session time.
and that was one of the premises of
Yeah.
tacking, sounds bad, tacking this on, but making this part of this agenda is, I mean, we're 45 minutes, half an hour in, and we're on the last agenda item right now.
Well, we could go another 3 hours on the rest of this stuff if we go that depth. That's why I'm trying to understand what we're talking about. I understand wanting to get the priorities delineated, which ones are still top drawer.
Okay. And from what we've heard tonight, we as staff know, yes, clearly still high priority, and we'll look at preliminary ways or preliminary budget that reflects ways to get that achieved. Sound good? Okay. So
Cool.
still high priority. All right, moving on down to the next one, economic development listed as a high priority goal. So it says create and fund an economic development plan. The city has entered into 2080s with Decorah jobs and with the hotel motel marketing steering committee. Outside of there, we're looking at general fund allocations. So is this something council wants to see an additional creation within the city's organization, or working with partners outside to utilize those 2080 funds?
So we held back some from that hotel motel. And we have that designated as economic development funds within our own city budget. And I don't have recollection that we've spent any of that. We still have that being built up.
North Alley area was the only thing that council's
Right, for
said
that
Yep.
cost. And we have toyed with ideas of some time of revolving grant program or loan program on behalf of the city, and ideas like that. And I guess that was something in my mind, like we should circle back around to that money and what we want to be doing with that. Because I assume that we'll have a pot from this year and then another pot of money. And as that grows, we might have some capacity to do some interesting things with that, especially in terms of downtown loans or grants for building repair, things like that. Yes. So that is still on my radar of being a high priority.
And I would say we haven't done the create the plan, what we see as our
Right.
prior. We've talked about having meetings to talk about what do we want to see? What are the incentives we want to? What are the programs, the projects we think are the way to go for the city to support? Knowing that there are other entities that are doing other things, what's the city's
Yeah.
push?
So I feel like we've done a fund, but we haven't figured out what the plan is for that fund.
So actually that continues to be a priority that we're working on.
So you want to create a plan or programs as a relation of those funds, or my understanding of when those 2080 discussions was that council wanted to just keep those as discretionary, where if another Hy-Vee Deco situation came up where the council could say, all right, we do have these discretionary funds for this, this specific project.
I guess I kind of felt like something like that would still be Decorah Jobs as portion of the 2080 agreement, that ours would be, yeah, that was not my, to me, that's Decorah Jobs portion of the 2080. I thought, and I do think we thought discretionary, but I think because we wanted to think of ways in which specifically for downtown, especially, that we could be more inventive with those dollars to help local businesses.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll just co-sign. So just that I think these are funds that I'd like to see us make a plan to effectively use to spur and incentivize downtown investment. I guess that's, I mean, we don't even need to decide on specifics, but I'd like to make a plan to use the money, and I continue to see this as a good priority for the city.
So that stays in place and needs to be developed
Yeah, because,
further.
and I don't know, I think when we had those 2080 discussions, we were pretty firm about how we wanted even the dollars we gave to Winnebago County Development and Jobs to look at ways to help downtown businesses as well. Because I think that has been a priority of ours.
I guess I appreciate the fact that we've set aside some money for economic development, but I am perfectly content to allow the economic development forces that we currently have to assist us in spending those dollars and not necessarily duplicating whatever it is they do, because I don't know that we all have enough time to create an economic development plan separate from what we're doing in economic development in the chamber and in hotel, motel, and so on. So that's kind of how I feel about it.
It'll be further, we need to be discussing further as we're going along with this one then.
Well, in any program we put together would come in front of council for program adoption.
Yeah.
So I guess maybe we can make it more granular and say somehow it sounds like we're interested in a facade improvement project. We've talked about this for years and years and years. It supports the downtown. It improves the tax base of the C3. That would be something, an economic plan that would be concrete that we could enact. But if it's done through a 2080 with our partners, whether it's done by them and we fund that program, or whether it's done by us, I don't feel like we have to, I don't know that the council needs to be involved in logistics, but just know that the funding is a priority.
Yeah, and I mean, I agree with the facade improvements. I think those are super helpful, but I also think even in the last year that we've seen with, trying to bring buildings up to code in the downtown, I guess I would extend it to things that would make our buildings safer in the downtown area. And again, I don't know if we want to do some kind of like, this is where I would turn to you, Travis, and say, what are some models of, is it a grant or is it a loan, right? Is it a revolving loan program that we cost share with people, or how we want to do it in order to make those dollars stretch as far as we can? But I think we've seen some needs related to both facade improvement and safety in our downtown buildings and historic districts. And I'd like to see those dollars that we're starting to set aside used for those kinds of things.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess I agree with sort of Ross and Kirk. I think that I don't necessarily care about how it works or like who administers the money. I just want to see it done. And I want to, and directed towards where the council's priorities are. And so I leave those sorts of things to staff. I mean, maybe those are questions for our 2080 partners. Do they have the capacity to administer these programs for us if we give them additional funds to do so? And if they don't, then maybe we have to have another conversation.
I thought the idea of developing the plan was to have the council say what exactly we want to see happen. And then we know what to tell these other partners about where they should put their efforts on our behalf. But if we don't have a plan established, then it's just whatever they decide.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to hand them a blank check and say, use this to promote downtown. I guess I agree with the tenor of Steve's comments that to the extent we need to establish clear priorities for how these funds are used, it's more the question of the administration, that's sort of the oversight of it. I'd be happy if that was not in-house.
I feel like right now we have a hybrid model. I mean, they have the bulk of our economic development money, no doubt. You know, I don't remember what we set aside. I think 20,000, which is nothing, but could grow to something. So I feel like we're already doing that. I think this was a way to use dollars innovatively that we had a little bit more control over.
So obviously, this is something we need to be discussing further in like work sessions.
Yep. Also ready to move on to the next one?
Yep.
All right, city space needs. The contract that the city has with Brunton Architecture for the discussion, fire station here, everything was basically put on hold until the North Alley discussions are complete. That next the public open house is next week, Wednesday, the 14th, in this room from 4 to 6 p.m. And so those should really pick back up after that North Alley planning is done.
So what's the timeline for that? So there's going to be this public meeting next Wednesday.
Mhm.
And then what's the next steps?
I believe we should see something in front of council in January for, all right, this is what council feels confident moving forward with. Same with the school. We want to have it in front of the school to see if it's aligns with their priorities as well, so that both can accept a general plan for the area.
Okay, so if I was to ask you our timeline then for resuming talks about the fire department, we should be able to continue that in January?
Mhm.
Okay.
So everyone good with still leaving it here as a higher priority?
Yes.
All right. Housing, ensure that zoning and policies are in line with housing goals. We are currently, as a reminder, we were selected by ISU Extension and Outreach for participation in their rural housing readiness assessment, which actually achieves this specific, this is a very specific goal here. And that's what that program is going to help us achieve.
And that, I think Scott Tim is working with that, but I think
Correct.
and they have many going on. I think he's working currently in Fairfield, I believe.
Right.
And
Yep.
then- Okay,
Yeah. Our local part hasn't started yet,
okay.
but that is ongoing. So that is still a
Still a
goal of-
priority.
Still a priority.
And we tasked, within our 2080, we tasked jobs with housing as well.
Mhm.
So hopefully they've had some activity potentially that we'll hear about.
Mhm. I do know that Stephanie Fromm and I have met with some housing developers, both within the community and even outside the community, looking at anything from workforce multifamily to single family development. So yeah, that is an ongoing effort on their part.
Great.
I'll just say that as excited as I am about this rural housing assessment, it seems to me that there are some obvious fixes to our zoning codes and our setback requirements that we wouldn't necessarily need to wait on these outcomes that would make housing more buildable and affordable to build 2 weeks from now. So I'm always happy to plan and to do studies, but sometimes, when there's a fire, you just put water on it. You don't necessarily sit around and make a plan for how much water, where and when. And I think for many Decorah residents, housing is such a burden that we should be responding with more urgency, looking at our ordinances and saying, does this make sense? Is this creating undue burdens for people who want to invest in housing and invest in providing housing stock to people who want it in Decorah?
So are you suggesting that we go through code to change setback requirements and accessory dwellings and?
I think it would be good for P and Z to do a first brush look at those questions and say, is this, I know that I'm kind of alone here, or at least I haven't heard anyone else say that they're eager to do this without waiting for the entire results of the housing readiness assessment. But to me, if there's no reason to wait to do the obvious, to wait until we have all the answers to do the things that I think the answers are already pretty clear for.
Well, and I think part of that is part of that study as well.
I don't, I agree
I
with you,
guess I
Steve.
agree. Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Okay, no,
Yeah,
it's-
I agree with Steve too as well. I think that's something we can move forward on. We've discussed that on numerous occasions, some of our zoning deficiencies and things like that. So I think that's something.
I agree. We should use that new zoning administrator much more than we have been.
But
He's
we
a
just
very
gave back the
confident
zoning
man.
administrator.
No, no.
I think we have talked about changing lot sizes and thinking about densifying, right? I mean, this is what I'm assuming we're talking about,
Yeah.
this.
So often
you
our
feeling,
Board of
Your Honor?
Adjustments is asked to make adjustments for
Lot sizes.
setbacks, lot sizes in particular. And that would be more appropriately handled at this level. So if we have a pattern in our Board of Adjustments of regularly approving these suggestions, I think that ought to be a real clear, signal to the council that we ought to take a hard look at whether we should continue to necessitate that workaround. Or could we simply just say, there's some pretty common sense things to bring our our ideal housing requirements in line with some of our best neighborhoods.
Being able to rebuild the flats
Should be legal.
should be legal. I mean, I think if you want to model, like what the council priority is, if my house burnt down, I couldn't rebuild it without going to BOA. I think that's a
Same.
problem.
You mean because of the setbacks?
And, and
Not
general,
because of the flooding
and
out?
general lot size. No, not because,
Okay.
yeah,
And that kind of stinks because Ross has a great house. It's a nice place.
yeah, yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
I'm serious. We should allow people to build houses like Ross's. And we don't right now. We make it illegal. And that's a choice that we continue to make every month that we don't change it. I think that when this process with the rural housing readiness assessment began, and I was first in communication with the folks at the Iowa State Extension Office, they told me a timeline that ended up not really being, possible for us for lots and lots of reasons. But I kind of thought we'd have almost answers by now, or 2 months ago, 3 months ago. But I'm feeling like this process is going to keep dragging out.
Yeah.
And I feel like
We know some of our answers, right?
people elected us to get stuff done.
Well, it sounds
You
as
know?
like,
Do we have any feel for timeline on that?
I mean, have we
You said they're
committed the
down in
funds?
Fairfield now, but I mean.
Yeah, I'd have to double check my emails. I did push out one a while back because I did ask for, and let me just pull it up.
How much funding do we have to commit to this, the rural housing?
We
Uh,
agreed to spend, I think, 5 or something,
5,000.
5,000, but we get a grant.
500 back or something.
Yeah, right. We get a grant back that offsets a lot of that cost. So I guess before Steve or the mayor speaks up and says, hey, we're getting too far afield, which is totally a fair critique, I'll just say that, yes, this remains an urgent and incredible priority. It's good that we're doing the rural housing readiness, but I hope that staff also hears that if there are no brainer, easy wins, I think they're worth the work unless you think that the rural housing readiness assessment is going to happen pretty quickly.
12 to 18 months is what they give for action planning.
No, I think we need to move forward.
So I guess if there are,
I should say that's the action planning side.
I hear
The
ya.
whole process, they do say 3 to 4 months start to finish, but depending on when they start and
I'm a planner, but
Actual
I'm with
implementation.
Steve. I mean, I believe in visioning and understanding where you're going, but I think we already know where we need to go
at least on
many of these housing and zoning issues.
maybe if we don't know the exact, floor plan of the final thing we're going to construct, we know some of the basics we need to do. And I think we could do some of that stuff.
well, so maybe that's going to P and Z and stating, that we want to look at the lot sizes.
And maybe,
Start having discussions and reviewing it.
I mean, someone could just look at the last BOA 5-year, what have they been doing? They've been
Mhm.
essentially granting
everything.
everything. Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah. Yep. You can be 5 feet closer. Or you can be 3 feet. I mean, I think
Time after time.
time after time.
Well, we're too far afield. I think the mayor's suggestion is good. Maybe staff could bring us a suggestion for something to send to P and Z.
I would say I'll just run it by P and Z.
Oh, great.
at their
Thank you.
next
Thanks,
meeting.
Travis.
And that-
Okay, communication. So develop a comprehensive communication plan that identifies communication channels, external and internal, develops and modernizes strategies, and identifies responsible parties. This is one that Carrie and her office have worked with the Sustainability Commission Subcommittee, Communication Subcommittee. A number of things have been identified through that, the website redevelopment, the addition of group cast, attempts to push out through social media more often. We've streamlined the press release process. So now we've got a central person that content is generated by other staff, pushed to them, they disseminate. When I brought up like the 4 examples before, I had 2, what is ongoing, what is currently being done, and we're comfortable with where we're at, or what's currently being done and we want to see a little bit more, we want to see further carried forward. This is one of them I had in mind. At the staff level, our struggle is if there is more to be done, who are we missing? And that's what the Sustainability Commission Subcommittee was tasked with, is if there are other things out there, or there are other people that we're not reaching, we need to know who that is. Because at this point, we're using what I would say is fairly common means for cities to push out information. We've done, or I do monthly reports with Darren, who's joining us via Zoom. So I'm sure I'll see an email here tonight wanting to recap and touch base. We do Our Town Monthly. We've been working with Decorah newspapers to push out a somewhat, I'd say probably bi-weekly. I think we do a blurb through Decorah newspapers. That's been very well received. So are there other things that council thinks that we need to continue to further advance this? Or is
I
council?
call it a win.
Council call it a win?
I mean, yeah. Oh, no, I was going to say, I mean, I think when Sustainability Commission met with city staff, I think they also feel like this is a total win. When this came up, when the sustainability plan was written, even when we were goal setting, we didn't have all of these wonderful people in place, and we didn't also have Comcast. I feel like we're doing everything. When we sat at that meeting, there wasn't much we could think of other than like, how do we get more people to sign up for our group cast? And that's a great place to be. I think communication is one of those things that any organization needs to keep in the forefront of, like, constantly checking, are we doing what we need to be doing to make sure we're reaching people? But I feel like this is a win. I feel like we've done a great job overhauling our communication.
Good job.
So
I think the website is well received.
Yeah.
I've heard a number of comments about it. So good job there. Yep.
Yeah.
No,
And if there are, tweaks that you hear, let us know. We're more than happy to hear feedback, even the not so nice feedback. We're open to that too.
and part of it's our responsibility up here to get the word out to the public too, to keep using the website and looking at things and things like that. So.
I think there's also, some soft communication that has been improved in a lot of strong ways. I mean, you can talk about the programs and the website and stuff, but I think it's important to continue to create and encourage a culture where we are reaching out to residents specifically to address their needs. And if people come into us with a problem, we don't feel the need to start a program or, come up with a solution that works for everyone, but we can actually address the real felt needs of people moment by moment. I see this all over the city organization, but one place I saw it yesterday was in reading Jeremy Brill's interview with the paper. And he mentioned, like, well, if there's a problem, we often will go knock on a resident's door and talk to them. And I think that is to be encouraged. That kind of, we're not necessarily in the customer service business, but it is important to realize that we are elected to and hired to serve the people of this city and meet them where they're at with the needs they have. So I think that's commendable, and I really appreciate how I see that throughout the city organization.
the only tweak I would say is we have to figure out how to get agendas with a title on the little thing that you get in your email.
Or the scanner.
Scanner instead of, because even when I search for them, I can't
Not an answer. I'm not looking for an answer right now, but can we change at least the title of the copier?
that would be awesome.
Okay, then you
City
have,
of Decorah. How's it sound? City of Decorah.
City of
Instead
Decorah,
copier, scanner.
whatever the title of the email could be what is attached.
You need, you need to be at this meeting.
Because Dropbox isn't searchable.
Yeah, Dropbox is, that's the trouble, is that Dropbox is not searchable.
Yeah.
And so it just,
It's not
you
like
look for,
Google
you go
Drive.
looking for something and you can't, you're just like, I don't
So
There's no way to find it.
there's a couple suggestions for you on what you need to work
So-
on.
Yeah. Chopper, just as a note, we'll discuss later. I know my Dropbox, the way mine is set up, it's like Files Explorer, so it's different than most people's. Is that maybe some way we can, because then it is searchable to me. Because it's set up like Files Explorer for me, but I don't know if that's a license thing. Yeah, never mind. That's expensive. But if you're searching for something, you can let me know and I can search it.
But if you're talking with e-government software people, I think that was on the update.
G-Works?
Is that what
Yeah.
G-Works is?
No.
Okay,
G-Works is more finance, like our civic.
Finance, yeah, finance software.
okay. Well, talk to them, see if they offer some sort of governmental file solution that's public facing, or talk to Dropbox and find out if there's a public facing thing. Because from a public record standpoint, we've been asked about public records requests and whatnot. If there was a way that you could search Dropbox, because Dropbox is public record, if everyone could search Dropbox just like Google, I think our society would be better. So I would, from a communication standpoint, that's something that I would put forth.
Okay. Yeah, Chopper and I'll talk about, see what we can come up with there.
Okay, the sustainability plan.
So that is still in Sustainability Commission's court.
Mhm.
The individual subcommittees kind of broke off their individual chunks to review. Several have reviewed, reported back. I know some have not yet. And so that's where, if council remembers, I believe we did 4 work sessions on this,
Mhm.
if I remember right. And sent it off to Sustainability Commission. That's where it's sitting currently.
Okay,
And I think an update from them is, I feel like transportation is the one that we're still waiting on. And they talked about it last week, that they said that they would, I think that was one they kind of wanted to overhaul a little bit.
Mhm.
But that's was where they are right now.
and the pay matrix.
Yes.
Complete, right?
Yep.
Okay, medium priority goals. Shared goals and coordination. Coordinate with community partners, identify common goals, potential shared resources via the Decorah 2030 group and city manager outreach. Excuse me. So the mayor holds quarterly community leaders, kind of an informal gathering. Pretty diverse group that it's a way of communicating different things going on throughout the community. It says about city manager outreach. I do continue to work closely with Stephanie Fromm, Jessica Rilling, that's just chamber and Decorah jobs. Those are the common ones, obviously, rest of staff as well. But this, as it walks down Water Street, sticks out pretty well. So I tend to end up communicating with quite a few people. And I hope that council hears similar comments, that, open to meeting different individuals, having those conversations, actively working with, when groups reach out to me. I knock on wood, I'm gonna say this, I haven't had to tell too many groups, I really believe in your cause, but usually it's the civic groups, Rotary, Kiwanis, Elks, they all want the city manager to join. I play Switzerland, say I can't join you because then I'd have to join them and them. But anyway, what I'm getting at is I do try and balance having involvement in the different peripheral groups within our city, but try not to overextend. So if there's different sectors that you think are missing on our end, or city where I specifically need to be more involved, please let me know. But I do think that we're doing a fairly good job, especially with North Alley, as that has progressed with the school and working with Dr. Cronin on that. What does council think? Still a priority, ongoing, and just continue to move forward with?
I feel, yeah, go ahead.
Ongoing thing that.
Mhm.
Keep working on.
Needs improvement or just keep going?
I think it's a lot like communication. You want to keep it out there as like we don't want to lose sight of it, but I think we're doing great.
Because
I-
the city manager one, I might look to formalize a little bit further, with, again, hospital, school, chamber, Decorah jobs, kind of more staff oriented to make sure we as all staff members of those organizations are all cognizant of what each other's doing. So that if there's overlap opportunities, we can do that. And we've done it on individual basis, meeting with Steve Slesser with the hospital on their improvements out there. And if there are ways to potentially partner with the city, or if the city was looking at some things that might be, I won't call it in conflict with, but that it would be a competition. Just keeping each other up to speed with our projects so that we don't overlap each other's efforts for all taxpayers.
On that note, the Iowa downtown assessment, I guess I'd like to just, one of their things that they said that Decorah would be die by planning. And we need to make sure we take action on things. That would be one piece. I know that you and Steve Luce had gone out to different community groups and discussed that plan with them when it was released. And I feel like the follow-up maybe is ready to have that happen. Especially communicate with community partners to identify a common goal. I think that assessment, that downtown assessment and shared resources ties in really well to that. And if you could use for 2023, I know streets had some money for wayfinding, and I believe a lot of the community partners like Rotary and Downtown Decorah Betterment and potentially SMID had said that they were interested in wayfinding. But if you could work on that plan in conjunction with our partners and find ways to turn a plan into reality, that'd be something I would appreciate.
That's a good point. That I believe invitations went out actually relatively long time ago, early in my arrival here. And I believe Betterment Association responded, and that may have been the only organization.
Jobs talked about it and then never got us anything, I think.
So,
But
but bringing that back up again to the table, I think is a good idea.
I mean, I think there's maybe some value at this point in seeing what the North Alley assessment comes up with, because it seems like some component of that would be an appropriate next shared project for the city to take a big step on. But
Agreed.
and especially given that that's coming fairly soon.
Agreed.
Correct.
I've been pleased with the work here and thank the staff for all the progress we've made.
Try to share with those community groups that if they would look at that assessment and give us a delineation, which is what you're saying, the letter was asking for people to say, where are you thinking priority? That gives us something to be able to make this economic plan and various things we see. But we wanted to get that community input.
Mhm. Okay. All right. Anything else on that one? Okay. MEU, work with the MEU committee to determine outcomes. I believe they anticipate being at our December 19th meeting to present an update at the least. And so still ongoing, but I think we're getting close.
Yeah, I think their language is even stronger.
Mhm.
They're planning on this being a final recommendation or at least a final report.
Mhm.
And I think they will consider their work as tasked by us to be complete. So, this has happened.
I think, so I've kind of been waiting for this to come up and biding my time, but I think that we, as a council, need to take this on now, right? So they're going to present to us on December 19th and some recommendations. But I would be remiss if I didn't suggest to fellow council members that we take the time to go back and watch the information sessions. I don't think, when I think of how many councils were at different sessions, my guess is that many of us have not seen more than 1, 2, of those sessions. And I think they are really important for us as council to consider. I think the MEU task force is going to talk about those sessions, and for us to not have seen the work that they have done would be pretty disingenuous in my perspective. And in particular, I don't think that any one of us has 8 hours to go back and watch them all. But I think there are some key ones to watch, including the conversations with bond counsel and
Mhm.
the
That would-
lawyer, David Lynch. Did I get his name right?
yeah,
With
that-
David
that one
Lynch.
Especially.
I think
is
it's very
important.
important to watch the
Mhm.
REC one and understand that the role that REC can play in a transition type of move to an MEU and ways in which they can serve Decorah. And also then any one of the MEUs that you want to watch, because I feel like the MEUs themselves were very similar in terms of these are what the benefits are. This is how we run it. You know, there's little tweaks here and there. If you're anti-MEU and you want to know, well, what about the one that sold their MEU? Watch that one, right? And learn that they sold their MEU because they were in a community with Mid-America serving half their community and half being served by an MEU. And if we had Mid-America as an option, we'd probably be talking about Mid-America right now, but we don't.
Forgot the spoiler alert.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. So
Travis, could you please send an email to the council with a link to those education sessions? That's acceptable because we're here in an open meeting.
Yeah, I think you
those
can.
those
you
are
can
also
You can also find them on
right.
really easy on our website now. that you go on
That's
the
right. But
website.
I thought that might be easier for us to be reminded to do this. I think Emily's suggestion is a good one, given that we've had a lot of people in our city working hard to research these things at our request. And I know that part of their report to the council will be a summary of these sessions. It will be good for us to be familiar with that.
Mhm.
The public is also encouraged to watch them if they have any interest, and they're very easily findable on if you go to tinyurl.com/MEU or something like that. But
I think they're
Actually, I
linked on our
just-
website too.
Yeah, they're.
is,
I think
are they
they're
right on
all-
our website?
Yep.
Okay, good. Yeah, go to decorahia.org.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I would like to, I mean, I would guess I would like to bring this up to high priority in terms of, I think we need to discuss the work of the MEU task force. I think we ourselves need to meet as a utility group and deliberate about where we want to go next with this after watching the videos. You know, I don't want people to show up to the utility committee with a bunch of misconceptions that have been mulling around our community since Alliant spread them, but actually to hear firsthand from experts in the field, come to a utility meeting, come together and decide how we want to move forward. I think that's in the best interest of Decorah. And for us to be informed at this point. I mean, I think if there's anything to be done with an MEU, it's going to be on us. There isn't a Decorah Power. There isn't an outside group. This is something that we will initiate as a council. And so we need to decide that together. And I think the best place to do that would be a utility committee meeting. So I would actually hope that by January, we're meeting in a work session with the utility committee talking about MEUs.
And so maybe this is one where the council looks at reformulating the goal. It's no longer working with the MEU task force to determine the outcome, but it's now for council to actually take this on. So Emily brought up moving it up as a high priority. I certainly think that timing of it is sufficient because they're coming this month yet, I believe, with a
Mhm.
recommendation. So high priority, I don't think it's an issue. Any council members take issue?
I think the discussion needs to be had as well after reviewing everything and the work that they have. Be sure that you come if you have questions for the next council meeting when they give the report. Be sure you have questions and bring that forth.
It seems like taking their work under advisement and for the consideration of the council work is a top priority
Right.
Mhm.
We owe it to the MEU task force for the work that they've done
in the community.
to seriously consider this, and everything they've done.
There's also been some recent rulings at the Iowa Utility Board directed towards Alliant, relevant to their work in Decorah, I think, and relevant to their rate increases. And I think that that is also something that's timely for us to be discussing in January.
Okay, childcare.
Okay, so
That we've
yeah.
worked pretty extensively on in the last year, I'd say.
Well, and certainly a big part of Decorah Jobs' life the last several years, from what I understand. Again, the city, one of the things that I want to point out during this conversation, and I think we I think Carrie's pointed out in the past, when the original motion was made of 500,000, where 250 in year one and then 250 across the next 5 years of some, but there was no, where's the money coming from? Where's, what's that timing look like? So we currently just are holding it as a accounts payable of 250,000, and we don't know where council, I believe it briefly came up during the discussion last council meeting on the sale of Fox and Coon property, that the thought was
Use that.
revenues from there were going towards it. One thing that we as staff, and Carrie, speak up if I'm not, but I think we're both in line with, and sorry, Chopper, but ARPA funds, using ARPA funds for that second contribution, so that one, we're not holding this accounts payable just kind of out there. That, that's a large accounts payable to just have out there. And two, we know that it is an eligible ARPA expense. Fiber infrastructure would also be, but we can also use general fund allocation towards that. Or in theory, if council wants to borrow potentially for the purchase of that equipment, if we keep it less than 600,000 as discussed before, we don't have to go for.
Is that 250,000 out of this budget or out of the June,
It would have to be
July
at the-
2023 budget?
That's got to be at the latest expense by January 1 of 25, right?
The
So
total
it-
amount used to be in by.
How much ARPA funds do we have?
About 1 million, and we've put out about 250,000. That's all we've done. So we have, it was just under 1 million. So we were talking today, we're thinking it's about 600,000. And I could look at the
Left, that we have left to.
right.
I would,
I think using ARPA funds for this, for the childcare contribution is perfectly fine.
I thought that was in the original discussion.
but you're talking 250 from ARPA, right?
And it may have been in the discussion, but it's
But it
not
was
in
never
the
acted on.
motion
Motion.
itself. And so we just wanted to, that's again, one of the conversations we want about this for budgeting purposes. Should we budget for does council want to get this off the books and use ARPA funds for it?
Yes.
Do we want to hold off and
We could also use sustainability funds too, correct?
I would not be okay with that.
in theory, yes, they could be, yeah.
I
I
think
would,
childcare is a priority and sustainability too.
Mhm.
Perhaps we can use both.
well, sustainability has committed, they did have 10,000 in their budget for childcare. So I mean, that we included, there is that money that they set aside.
Is that in the?
That was in
proposed
this year.
for-
No, that was in this
No,
year's
that
budget.
was
They had written at
before.
10,000. So I think they already have suggested that they give 10,000, and I think we can knock it down to 240 and use 10,000 from sustainability. That was what they recommended for this year's budget as well. So, and I actually think it might be included in their current discussion. So that'd be 20,000. But I don't think we should take 250 from them. That would be. But I am still thinking that we should use the Fox and Coon, that 250 that's in there, and then ARPA funds for the rest.
We may be buying that back.
We may be, but
Have we heard anything? So, I don't know how much conversation we can have on it as a non-agenda item, but staff as in, I want to give credit, it's not blame, it's credit. Jeremy did catch, there's some ambiguity in the contract that could, the language states that a site plan needs to be approved and that the site plan doesn't need to encompass the entire property. Well, if council remembers, council just approved a site plan that involved a driveway for Alliant. So in theory, a person could, the lease could be, or contract could be met by applying for a site plan for a driveway.
include an easement.
Right, but they could just put a driveway 50 feet into the property and have that site plan approved and have the construction done and met the terms of the contract. They wouldn't have to put any buildings up. They wouldn't have to do anything
We'd have to
else.
approve that site plan.
They'd have to have in a can't remember the exact language, but a site plan in front of council for consideration and approval within that time frame. I mean, in theory, the council could deny the site plan.
Why are we trying to do that when we don't have an easement through that
But
property?
how about if this comes up for council discussion, because we don't really have it on the
Yeah.
agenda this time.
You shouldn't,
Yeah.
Anyhow, well,
Yeah.
contingent on still having that money, I think we should use the 250 from the Fox and Coon Club for the other part of the childcare.
The other thing too is to bring forth for discussion, where this funding is going to come from so that we can make a decision on it in a council setting as well.
Right. And that's,
Hmm.
with this one in particular, that's a big item.
Mhm.
So does council want to hold off on any kind of allocation? Do we want to get this off the books, get that money over there? And if that's the case, do we want to come from ARPA or other sources? And I say other sources because they're all going to be lumped under general fund that could go there.
So maybe ARPA for the first installment and then we figure out the 250 if we have to, if we don't have Fox and Coon Club.
Well, that first
The first
installment's already,
installments. Oh, sure. Oh, we're just, okay.
the second installment's the one that we still have looming, that 250,000 outstanding.
So we've already paid 250,000. Gotcha. Okay.
So we as staff will prepare a budget that shows 250,000 in ARPA funds.
Okay.
240 and 10 from sustainability.
40 and 10.
Yeah.
I like that too. We can do
Yeah,
that.
240, 10 for sustainability. I would like to bring up one other thing about childcare. I think that, we have done a lot for Sunflower, but I don't know that we've actually ended our childcare problem. And so I do think that there may be some innovative things we could look at as a city to think about how do we help people who want to open up childcare centers in their house? Like, can we do things with property taxes? I don't know if these are legal, but I came up with discussions with people. But if you're operating a licensed childcare center out of your own home, can we help with some of the fees? Can we help, are there ways that the city can help encourage people to move to Decorah to be childcare providers in their home? Can we do something with property taxes that if you are operating a licensed childcare in your home, we can waive a certain part of your property tax
I don't know you can go down that path, but you can, create grant,
rebate?
Incentivize.
basically grants.
Oh, an
to-
economic development plan.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's a part of me that feels like if we want to solve our childcare crisis, we have to step outside of the box of what is current and go with something new. So I would propose that this still stays a priority. I don't think it's fixed.
Or supporting background checks or.
Yeah, and I think having a conversation with childcare providers and maybe economic development outside of Sunflower would be a great conversation to have.
Yeah.
Super. Infrastructure maintenance.
So I'd like to also see this move to higher I don't like that it's medium priority because I feel like most of our dollar amount is in this amount of money, so it should be a high priority.
Well, remember when this goal was set, you guys all had, was it 3 votes or 5 votes?
I
Must have been
suppose.
3.
Well, now that we've
No.
moved communication and pay matrix out of high, and I think the MEU is high for a moment in time, I guess I would like to see infrastructure move up on our list of priorities. I
Could we
think-
call it public works?
Sure. I mean,
I think Travis coming from a public works background, both on the ground and from a public works governing system, in talking with him and Kirsten, to your point, about efficiencies and within departments and whatnot, I think looking at a public works model as we move into budgeting might be a good way to do that through both capital improvement planning and recognizing the fact that a lot of our infrastructure improvement projects include stormwater and above ground. So I'm just going to throw that out there, that instead of calling this infrastructure maintenance, we just call it public works and know that public works reflects on maintenance, but
Yeah.
also on future planning and is a high priority. Yeah.
the only reason I like the word infrastructure in there is one, because I think there's money for infrastructure. And two, I think we really do have an infrastructure problem. Like, I mean, not that we are alone in this, but our streets are bad and we're doing all we can do. And I'm just want council to continually think of what can we be doing differently or
And, but I think the North Alley project really will, hopefully, will show that the planning and
agreed.
and
Yep.
engineering and bidding, when you look at the entire structure of infrastructure, it's not just, it is infrastructure, but it's holistic infrastructure, and planning for infrastructure often isn't just streets. It's also underground or power or cable
Or
or
fiber.
fiber, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's more than, so a public works model allows you to have a holistic plan and maybe do a better job of bonding.
Right. And by,
Um,
by virtue of calling it public works doesn't necessarily mean that infrastructure isn't part of it, obviously.
Right, it's definitely part of it.
Right.
It's
right,
it may
right.
be actually recognizing
Right.
more of that.
Right.
So are you
More
suggesting
inclusive.
moving, I guess I'm confused in terms of, are you suggesting moving the language to like moving towards a public works model? Or are you saying just renaming it?
Yeah, but I'm just calling it renaming it, but recognizing that that creating a public works model, coordinating municipal improvements between departments and complete a capital improvement plan for all departments really is public works.
Sure. Okay.
Um,
Yep.
Not just maintenance, it's planning.
So it's sort of getting used to the definition of what that public
Right.
work means. Mhm.
So in June, when I completed all the department heads evaluations for the last fiscal year, everybody was tasked with working with Carrie to develop their department's CIP on a 5-year basis so that we can start aggregating this into an organization-wide 5-year CIP. So know that it's been on our radar and staff is working towards that. I do hope to see, at least like a 2-year foresight during the budget discussions that, because it's all too easy that if we're only looking year to year and you see as part of the water utility an improvement for backup power generation, since we were able to receive those grants, it's all too easy to say, it's been a tough year. Let's hold off on that. Let's put it to next year. But if you don't see in front of you that we've got a very costly water tower maintenance item in the next fiscal year, when you see both of them on that next fiscal year, something again is getting dropped off. So we as staff are getting there on this particular item.
That's awesome.
But you are wanting to see that moved up to a higher priority?
Yes.
I think so.
Okay.
And looking at bonding capacity, because that's something that I don't think we want to be having wider reaching planning at a budget meeting. Like, our budget meetings are for the budget forthcoming, but having bigger discussions about the next larger bonding project as a council, rather than having it be street committee or a lack of water and sewer representation at a, utility does some of that, but it would be good to have it be centrally coordinated so that we can look at some of these rolling bond projects and have a little higher exposure in my experience.
You know, what would be helpful, at least to me as a council person. And I know we've talked about it in streets department and council meetings. Jeremy's been really good about planning these things. We talk about things that like, okay, when Locust Road reaches this point, this bond will have dropped off and this bond will have dropped off. And then we have this bonding capacity, but nowhere I've ever seen a sheet that kind of has like, okay, this bond is for this year's, but this one drops off. So in this year,
I think we have had that
we
sheet.
have, but it's not very well organized. I know.
I think,
but we
at
don't
least
have,
the sheets that I've seen, I thought were pretty well organized by years and stated.
but it
when-
doesn't have like an earmark of what we are thinking could happen with there.
So I have displayed it in a way. I know exactly what you're talking about. And yes, there have been in years past a sheet included in the budget worksheet material. I've seen it presented differently and will present it differently this year as a stacked graph over
Mhm.
time
Right.
that shows here's our 100%
Okay.
capacity. And this current fiscal year, as you stack all those payments, here's your line graph that shows as your debts all retire, and you can see then it's a visual representation of all those numbers as it relates to 100% of your capacity.
Right. And no, I know that sheet and I know what you're talking about. But what I'm saying is, have we ever then put together that sheet with our strategic plans of like, okay, when this drops off, we're going to bond again for roads. And here's the roads we're actually thinking of. Obviously those things change, but I guess in my mind, I like to be hopeful and be like, hey, okay, as soon as Locust Road is 3 years in, we're now going to bond for fiber and 3 major road projects downtown. Right. And obviously those things change, but it's that idea of planning for the future and having an actual, like, what are we actually going to be looking to do with the money as it bonds down?
Mhm.
Earmarking it, maybe that's what it's called. Everyone hates earmarks, but it does help you say like, all right, here's one, we've done it with other projects where you say like, even our streets plan is that this is what we'd like to do next year and the year after. But it was that question I brought up at streets, like, how do we ever tackle these $1 million streets? When do we ever get to do those? And the only way we're going to do that is to bond.
Mhm.
And so we know when our bond capacity is going to be at a comfortable level for council to bond again. And so can't we start thinking about what does that look like? And have a 10-year plan for figuring out some of these
It's just called
major
Public
projects. Right. But I mean, but actually putting a name to them, like the streets we want to do, if it's fiber, if it's this, and obviously things come up and we would move them, but I still think it helps have a vision of how we're moving forward. I guess that, I don't know if maybe I'm the only one who would want that, but.
I think you'd be able to do that, you know, especially if you have consideration as to what we're going to be considering. I'll say relatively short term and then relatively long term, but it's probably not easy to go too far out considering
Yeah.
what you might have to
I
bond for.
I think we'd struggle getting beyond 5 years
Yeah.
one, our CIP would go to 5 years, and then, yeah, for several departments that if I don't have a lot of equipment and my capital improvement list is fairly small, I can plan out for 20 years, 30 years. Or if I'm focusing just on equipment, then I can kind of plan out that far. But if you're looking at a true CIP of all our assets, which are more liability than anything, streets, water, sewer, and you do a CIP on those, taking those into consideration, you extend beyond 5 years and you're not getting very reliable data.
Well, and your material costs and everything. are-
Correct.
Okay, well, maybe it's just that I see our streets in red, right? I mean, maybe I'm being very street focused because I feel like we have revenue that comes in. I feel like, especially when I've talked to Mike and Todd, this idea of like the water and sewer to me seems a little bit more balanced in terms of revenue coming in and a savings plan for those moving forward. I see streets as kind of this like hole that hasn't been filled and we don't have a plan to fill it. And the only way we fill it is with bonds, right? Maybe I'm wrong in that regard.
No, you're not. That's the harsh reality.
Okay, so that is why I feel like we need to have a plan that, again, things change. Maybe our entire sewer, water, and sewer treatment needs to be redone, which hopefully we're not there. It sounds like we might not be. But if we had an idea of our bonding capacity, right, as a graph, but along with that, went along with a package deal of streets, we could at least help that department feel like we're moving forward because we don't have answers to our big street projects that we need. This just gives a vision for them.
Yeah, and that's I've done this exercise in the past, did a life cycle analysis of the entire street grid. Now I was in Humboldt, little smaller, population 5,000, but we had 37 feet wide streets. So maybe even close to the same amount of pavement, arguably, but did a life cycle analysis and we can run a similar model here. I guarantee you will not like the number that we give that says $4 million every year needs to go towards street maintenance or we'll never catch up.
I think
we saw it. I mean, that's where I'm getting at. We saw that when we were
Don't
looking at the
smirk over
streets.
there too much.
No, when we looked at the streets, and I mean, it happens that I live on one, right? So I can push this till I'm blue in the face. We look at those, we look at streets like Ravine, or throw me another one, Jeremy. So I'm not constantly talking at Ravine.
How about North College Drive?
North College Drive, right? And when we ask, well, when are they going to be done? We don't have an answer because we don't have a plan to
Mhm.
budget for them. Our plan is to bond, but we aren't going to throw a bond right now on top of Locust Road at what we're doing right now. But when will we, right? Say, I'm just making up 2 years from now, we will. And so why can't we say 2 years from now, when the Locust Road bond has gone to this level, we're going to put together a $3 million package, and we want to make sure this street is in there, and another $1 million in case we need water or sewer or other infrastructure within it. And maybe when that 2-year mark hits, we realize that, oh, actually, this has come to be a higher priority, but at least we have a plan for how we're tackling with that.
Emily, I feel like in my opinion, that approach would be putting the cart before the horse. And I think the really important piece that we need is the CIP, and that, you know, we need to put numbers on what maintaining our streets is actually going to cost over the next 5 years. We're going round and round on this, but I feel like it'd be really good to have those numbers that we can maybe question some of the assumptions that are baked into some of your comments. Like we need to do another major street project here and here and here. Maybe we need to actually rethink the kind of street project we do next time we have bonding capacity to do one. And so I'd like to do the CIP. I suspect it's going to show us that, you know, we're going to have a tough time maintaining adequate levels of service on the roads as they currently exist. And then maybe that starts forcing us to have some important conversations about, is what we've done for the last 60 years sustainable for the next 60? I think the CIP is an important first step.
Well, and I think we need to also think about the infrastructure act. You know, I think central coordination and having better planning your CIP and shovel-ready projects in place, which is also why the North Alley plan is important. Having these things well planned out and well thought out and mapped out within the 5 years with federal infrastructure money, hopefully coming sooner than later, we can make some once in a lifetime impacts in our community.
Well, no, I mean,
But I think it has to happen.
I don't think I'm
now.
saying anything different than those
No,
two things.
Nope,
I think I
just
just wanna-
mentioning the federal money.
Yeah, I think I want the both and
Yeah.
asking for.
Well, when we're starting to look at the budget part and we're starting to look at what's coming up for the streets, then the natural thing is to look, okay, how do we look to do that? So there needs to be more discussion in that particular area. Okay,
All right.
council staff collaboration.
This is one that I don't know that we've taken tremendous like specific strides with. Like there haven't been, 10 different examples of when we've done this, but I think we have done a very good job of this. Right, staff? I'm kidding.
Well, you definitely have, because of the way you have set up the discussions with every week with the staff, along with working with them individually too.
So is this, is council wanting to see more out of this specific, or are we good where we're at with this? Is this achieved? Is this maybe
Process.
in process? Okay. So with that, is there more, this isn't necessarily budget related. This is getting a little into the weeds. Are we thinking more, you want to do more full-fledged goal setting sessions with staff that, maybe I shouldn't have said full-fledged goal setting, but you want to have more of these sit down and goal setting discussions frequently? Because that was probably, I think, the most direct involvement between council and staff that I could of one specific instance. I think that goal setting session was probably the most direct one.
So would you take perhaps one topic at a time and have that type of it.
Well, and that's, I guess I'm open to ideas for how to, that's actually what I'm trying to get is, what other ideas, where do you see that what could we do to achieve this goal further?
I'll offer an opinion.
Mhm.
If we focus back on the committee structure, I know that I interface with Jeremy quite a bit. And just the street department, I'll just go and ask and be like, when there's a project, I can go up and be like, hey, is there anything that you need to make your job better or whatnot? You know, each of us with our committees could interface potentially more closely with you know, like now that you're the zoning administrator, neighborhoods, economic development, the community outreach thing, you know, utility, the stormwater and excuse me, maybe just more touches from a committee to the department would be beneficial. We get our Friday updates, but and we don't have to work at a granular level. I mean, I'm not going out there and asking if we need to buy new boots for people or, you know, new high vis vests, because that's not council's things. But having more feedback on ways that we could support the department heads or their departments at a committee structure, so we can bring it back to the council, I feel would be beneficial.
Okay. Other ideas?
We need a new fire department. That was
Build- like
that was
building,
me.
right?
That was me. If I went and talked to the fire department, that's what they would say.
But I want to make sure you're talking about the building, right? Not staff or anything.
I'm sorry, we need a new fire building.
If you want us to be more involved, they gotta go.
It was a joke. I'm sorry. I was trying to be funny.
I hate to put staff on the, you know, on the fly here, but what would you guys like to see? Anything more from us or?
You might get asked by the fire board, fire board many years. For staff, it was somebody there. I mean, maybe you guys, I don't know. That's gonna be a great idea. Maybe some way of outreach or at least check in. One person pays special attention to them. And if they're I think they're gonna come to you and ask that.
The park board, do you think, Andy?
It's a good.
Anybody else?
suggestion.
Has there been, were there historically like that? I'd never known that. Did every commission have a council liaison? Like, cause we don't have a P and Z council person either,
For a
right?
while, periodically, there was one that used to come to the library, but
Or library or,
it wasn't on a regular basis, I think, but.
I think the culture has been changing and improving in good ways, and I think it's important to pay attention to that kind of advance and not just programs and ideas and different, you know, official ways of connecting. I think that's good. When I first was elected to council, many staff heads or many department heads reached out to me to invite me to come and have conversations with them to get to know the program better. I know that Emily undertook a similar project this summer, just trying to meet with all the department heads. And I think that that's a great leadership, Emily. I would encourage council members to do the same, but also I hope the staff are hearing that just because, you know, I've been at this 2 years, if there's a conversation you want to have with me, and I assume that this goes without saying with any council member, you know, our email addresses are right there on the internet. And I certainly extend an open invitation to reach out if there's a project you're thinking about down the line that you'd like to get some feedback on, or maybe start sowing the ground for, softening the ground for, or if you just feel like you haven't heard from me in a while. I'd love to hear that from you and love to sit down with any of you at any time that we can find that works.
Ditto.
All right. So that's the list of goals that were set as higher, medium priority during that time. Are there other goals that individual council members want to bring up at this time to have a brief conversation with in this format? So that we know if we need, if Councilmember Zittergruen is, I want to see this in the budget and I'm not voting yes unless I see that in the budget. Now would be a great time if you would bring it up so that we as staff can start preparing for that. And the rest of council members, we can have that conversation. I'm just picking on Steven. I don't know. if
No,
there's
and
anything
I
in
probably do
particular.
have things like that, but if I may make a suggestion, we're at the end of a meeting that I think has gone longer than some of us anticipated at least. And I wonder if any suggestion that any of us made would be well received right now. I suspect it wouldn't. And so I wonder if we could have this conversation in 2 weeks at that. I don't know if that works with the timing of things, but I'd like to see a chance for us to have some time. I wasn't aware of how substantial this conversation would be. And I'd like a chance to actually think through what I would like to see added to this list, because I think that'd be a valuable exercise for me. If other council members don't mind deferring that
I agree.
conversation.
I agree.
So just so we're all
Alright.
clear, when it's on the agenda in 2 weeks, it's very much asking us for like
Mhm.
new priorities, and we should spend the weekend thinking it through and not be surprised next time. Great. Thank you very much.
I think that's a good suggestion considering the timing for budgets and stuff.
All right. That's all I had for this item.
Okay. Thank you for the discussion. I appreciate it.
I think this was a super helpful discussion, but I had emailed you, or called you.
Okay. Okay. City manager, department heads and council reports. City manager.
Did attend my first legislative policy committee meeting for the Iowa League of Cities, mostly just introductions, updating on different statewide elections. So not too much to report back on that, but did also participate in a legislative forum with Upper Explorer Land, where they had a really great format actually, where it was Zoom, broke off into several rooms. So there were 3-4 of you that had a chance to sit with individual sessions of state and federal legislators. Very well received. Did both Representative Bergen, Senator Klemesh were there. I emphasized and was very blunt that the any legislation regarding lost was very concerning to me, because the blunt part was the state's track record on promises to pay cities back is not very good. And so I'm not going to believe if you tell me you're going to make this a general fund allocation and follow through with it. And both very well received that comment, at least at that time. And so again, that'll be the first of, I'm sure, several that participate in January 6th, I believe. No, that's not the right date. It's the second Monday in January is when the session kicks off. So I'm sure there'll be a lot of conversations once that starts.
Okay. Anything else?
That's all I got.
Carrie?
Just regarding the communications, like with Groupcast, we have gone up to 230, so it's slowly but surely. We've done a big push. If you've seen posters around town or notices, we've reached out to churches, and after discussion this morning, we're going to start reaching out to large employers to try to get it out there more.
You also had that on one of the billing? Did you?
Yeah,
Did you?
we've done it on all the billings, all the cycles of there too. So
And I asked Carrie, and she could send to any council member, but to send me like a little email blurb. So anytime a constituent writes me a note, I write my answer back to them, and I write to them, hey, by the way, you can sign up for this new service. And it's gone really well. So if you have constituents who just send you an email, I always send that out too.
Chopper, can you make us a email footer that's universal?
I think.
Oh, he's talking about like a little
I
footer
think-
at the end.
No,
of
I
our
think
email?
Carrie and Leslie have.
Do you have an email footer that you use that talks about group crafts?
There's something we can send to you that you.
Yeah,
can-
just give me the language that you're using for your signature and
Sure.
I'll throw it in my signature.
Thank you.
Anything else? Departments? Going twice.
Thanks for the snow day, Jeremy.
Okay.
I know you control the weather.
Okay. Randy,
I just want to say we had a great night at the walkthrough out at Holiday Lights. I think
was
Ben said we had
great.
around 3,000 people come through.
Wow.
I want to give a shout out to Steve Vandebrink from the fire department. Thank them for letting us use their side by side with the lights to slow the traffic down coming down the hill. But then also we did have a medical emergency this year, and between Steve and the sheriff's department had 2 deputies in there. We were able to handle that very quickly with the crowd, and everybody's okay. So moving forward, unfortunately, it's 2 years running. We've had a medical emergency out at.
yeah, but you
Holiday
know
Lights.
that the amount of people that they had out directing people and
Yes.
safety
Oh, yeah,
and going across, this year I was
It's
really
It's starting
surprised.
to run very, very smooth
Very
between
much so.
shuttles and the walkers.
Yep.
Lighting the trail really helps, and then lighting the bridge coming across from the
Right.
second campground. And Andy, thanks to you and your staff too for letting us use that area.
Yeah.
We really appreciate it. Other than that, and the
Okay.
holiday parade went well.
Oh, very much so. That was
Yeah, Good
fun.
weather for that one too. So
Yep.
let's keep
Emily.
it going through Christmas.
That's right.
Yeah, I know. We didn't have a meeting of the week of Thanksgiving. There's always a good time to say thanks. So thanks to all the city staff and everyone working on behalf of the city. We live in a magical place. And one thing that always reminds me of that is the holiday parade. It's my favorite parade. I love it. It brings out the best in Decorah and represents who we are. So I really appreciate all of you in this room and thank you. I was very disheartened to open up Decorah News though and see the shooting at Corner Brook. As someone who works in a public school and thinks about shootings a lot, and then having one in your hometown, it shakes you up. And I'm distraught thinking about what we can do to protect our community from gun violence. I'm worried that I feel like gun violence is going to be more problematic. I don't know what we can do as council. Seems like our hands are tied, but as you know, I like to think that there's always a solution of something we can do, but I don't know what that is. But I would be remiss if I didn't say that this bothers me deeply. The constitutional amendment, I'm happy to say publicly, bothers me deeply that we can't in any way keep our community safe. And that really bothers me as a council member.
Thank you. Kirsten?
We had a meeting, I think it was last Wednesday, of the Drinking Water Protection Team. Jeremy and Todd are part of that as well. We've got some results back of the analysis they did on our wells. The PFAS levels are almost non-existent in the well 2 that we checked. And nitrate levels are at acceptable levels, which is a good thing, but that's for now anyway. We're also we're waiting for a full report to come back on the checks they've done. And we're hoping to be able to figure out kind of where the well water is coming from, whether the river's playing a part in it or whether it's more stormwater runoff and stuff like that that's contributing to it in the capture zones. And we're also working on a YouTube video so the public can be aware of what we're up to. Jeremy and Todd are busy taking acting lessons. They're going to be the stars of the show. So, so anyway, but that's our report for the Drinking Water Protection Team.
Okay, and I also went to the same legislative Zoom that he went to, and it was very valuable because you ended up being maybe 2 or 3 and being able to talk to legislators. So, Steve Luce.
'Tis the season. Nothing tonight.
Okay, Steve Zettergren.
Thanks, Mayor. Just Wednesday, the MEU task force is going to be meeting at 11 a.m. here, and they will be discussing their final recommendation, or not final record, I should say final report, and considering the
Yeah.
possibility of making final recommendations to us. So I'm That's just an important meeting. And I also missed you all 2 weeks ago. I woke up in my hotel bed on vacation and I just desperately wished I was here instead.
Okay, very good. Yeah. Ross?
I just want to say how much fun it is to go downtown and shop and see the new stores and whatnot, and the moves of some of the other shops taking over new spaces and whatnot. It just shows the vitality of our community. I had a chance to talk to a couple of people who are doing work downtown on second story housing over cocktails at Impact and listen to live music. So the downtown is hopping,
It is.
and I'm excited that we can continue to support it through upper floor housing, better design, and maybe some economic development money. So let's just keep the focus on the heart of the community.
Thanks.
Nothing, Mayor.
Okay. Yeah, if you haven't been downtown, go downtown. I've been down there the last couple weekends and it's great. You can get all your shopping done right here without even going out of town. Okay, anything else? Move to adjourn? Okay, see you on the 19th, I think.